preside.
All right, good morning. Let's go ahead and set forth our appearances on the record.
Your Honor, Will Kemp, the plaintiff.
Good morning, Your Honor. Teddy Park on behalf of the plaintiff.
Good morning, Your Honor. Robert Eglett on behalf of plaintiff.
Good morning, Your Honor. Maggie Federico on behalf of plaintiff.
Good morning, Brianna Switzer on behalf of plaintiffs.
Morning, Your Honor. Eric Peppermint, the plaintiff.
Brad Johnson, Michael Esposito, and Eric Freeman on behalf of the defendants.
All right, is there anything outside the presence?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right, I guess we're ready to continue, right?
Yes.
Okay, we can bring the jury in. I knew it would be 9:15. I knew it.
Well, at least it's 9:15.
Exactly.
Right.
If I'd have said starting at 9:15, it'd have been 9:30. So I'm fine.
Oh, God. All right. Let's see.
All rise for the jury.
All right, do the parties stipulate to the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And I guess we're going to continue on, and I think the plaintiffs will call their next witness. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiffs call Nigel David Richard.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
I do.
May you state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, Nigel Davis Richard, Niegal, last name Davis, Davis, hyphen Richard, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, counsel, you may proceed.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. How about you introduce yourself to the jury a little bit? Tell me about yourself.
Name is Nigel, born and raised here in Las Vegas. I currently work for the District Attorney's Office as a process server. I enjoy running.
So you said you grew up in Las Vegas. What high school did you go to then?
I went to Shadow Ridge High School.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
Shadow Ridge High School. So I think you said you liked running. Is there anything else you like to do in your free time?
Binge watching TV shows.
The best times. So I guess we can kind of go to the reason why we're here today. So taking us back to October of 2020, were you drinking real water at this time?
Yes, I was.
And you were drinking from the 5-gallon jugs and the retail bottles?
Yes, that is correct.
Was there a point when you started to not feel well?
Yes, around October of 2020.
Tell me about that.
I experienced nausea, stomach pains, and at first I was just letting it see if it was going to go away, but it never did, so I went to urgent care.
And we have admitted exhibit 246. Shane, if we could have page 1. Each time I don't think medical records can get smaller. Can you pull that up for us? I think at the tippy top there it says October 1st of 2020. Do you see that there?
Yes,
Is that about the time when you decided you need to go to the hospital?
yes, that is correct.
And do you recall if the doctors did blood tests at that time?
That I don't recall.
All right. Shane, if we can go to page 2. I think towards the very little bottom, there we go, perfect. We see on October 1st, we have some slightly elevated AST and ALT limits. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So after you left this urgent care for the first time, how are you feeling?
About the same. Still nauseated, stomach pain. Once again, I was like, oh, maybe it just go away. You know, normally you go to the doctor, you still feel ill, they give you medicine or whatnot, and it goes away.
And Shane, if we can have the timeline, please. The first one. Was there a time when you decided you needed to seek medical attention again?
Yes,
And do you recall about when that was?
November, same year.
Okay. Go ahead and put the next one up for me. So, and at that time, you had abdominal pain, nausea, and vomiting. So was this about an entire month with those same symptoms?
Yes, same symptoms.
What did they do? Did they do anything for you at Digestive Associates?
It was, I want to say, the same routine that the first time I went. Yeah, can't recall, but it was about the same.
Just told you to follow up and sent you on your way?
Yeah. Yeah, nothing was wrong. Oh, it may just be the weather, anything, you know.
And did the symptoms stop after that visit?
No, they did not.
Were they getting better or worse or staying the same?
They're actually getting worse.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I still had the same symptoms, nausea, stomach pains. I became dizzy. My memory wasn't the same. I experienced tremors. I think that's about it that I can remember.
So, was there a time when you decided you needed additional medical help?
Yes.
And Shane, if we can have the next one for me, please. So you went back to urgent care at this time?
Yes, that is correct.
And Shane, if we can go to page 4. And here it says dizziness, nausea, loss of balance, shaky, fatigue. As far as the shaky goes, can you describe that to the jury of what you mean by that?
My nerves would just start jumping in my body, my face, uncontrollably.
And is that the tremors that you're kind of talking about?
Yes, and they would come out of nowhere. I would just be sitting or even driving. I was at the barber shop. My mom was cutting my hair, and then my face just started jumping, and yeah.
And did they decide to admit you or anything at this time?
No.
Were they giving you any explanation as to what was going on?
No, not at all.
And I think at the bottom here it says that they discharged you. When you were released, were you feeling the same sort of symptoms?
Yes.
And during this entire time, are you still drinking real water?
Yes, I was still drinking real water.
So, was there something again that triggered your decision to go to an emergency room again?
I just wasn't feeling like myself. I'm normally healthy, no health problems. I just didn't feel in my right mind. So I ended up going to the emergency room.
And at the emergency room, do you remember them taking blood samples?
I believe so. They did, because at this point, I've been telling them everything that I've been experiencing, and I believe they did take blood.
Shane, if we can go to page 5, please. And so here we have the long words for AST and ALT, but it looks like your ASTs were 432 and your ALTs were 64. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Were you admitted to the hospital at that time?
No, I was not.
Did the doctors tell you that you had elevated liver enzymes?
No, they did not.
So I think we have 4 different doctor visits at this point. How were you still feeling?
I was feeling the same, but felt like I was declining, like it was getting worse.
And did you, as recommended, did you follow up with the primary care physician after the ER visit?
Yes, I did. I followed up with my primary doctor.
And with the similar complaints, is that correct?
Yes.
And it says memory lapses. What do you mean by that?
The days started blending in together, pretty much together. Couldn't remember what day it was. Yeah, even as simple as my password or someone's telephone number that I would know.
And so this was about a month and a half or so of these same these same symptoms. Is that true?
Yes, that's correct.
And so you'd seen, I think, 5 different medical providers. Can you describe what that was like?
At this point, I was giving up because they were like, "Oh, he's just having a mental breakdown." They prescribed me anxiety or depression medication, and that didn't help. I started having hallucinations, bad dreams. So I stopped taking the medication, but the dreams never stopped. They were getting progressive and worse.
And so this takes us to I think we're around Thanksgiving at this point. Did something else happen where you decided you needed to seek medical attention again?
Yes, I was fixing a plate, and like I was saying, my nerves and the shaking, I wasn't able to hold the plate. Plate dropped. I didn't know what was going on. I really didn't. I was crying every day, and I don't like to feel weak. And at that moment, I was really down. Every day I would wake up crying because the symptoms weren't going away. The doctors didn't have any questions or answers, I should say. Yeah.
And were you still having those similar symptoms? Can you tell me about that?
Yes. Dizziness, loss of memory, fatigue, the tremors, loss of appetite. So the only thing I was drinking was water. Yeah.
And that was real water?
Yes.
And so we have about a month and a half, almost 2 months at this point. Were the symptoms getting better, worse, or staying the same throughout this period?
They were getting worse.
And so I think the next we have a telehealth that says complaining of shakiness, nausea, and extreme fatigue. At this point, did you decide you needed to go to a hospital?
Yes. Actually, it was my family that said I need to go to the hospital. So I went to Centennial, waited in the lobby for a while because it's COVID, so it was really strict, backed up. So then I'm also scared of that because it's COVID. Didn't know what was happening. They admitted me to the hospital, ran a lot of tests that I could remember.
And Shane, if we can go to page 8, please. So it says here that you had altered mental status and confusion that was constant and worsening, tremors and weakness with increasing change in mental status. Is that kind of what you were telling us about as far as, and it says hallucinations here. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
About the hallucinations. I would go to sleep, have these dreams of people's faces melting, and then wake up, especially in the hospital. I didn't know where I was. I would wake up screaming. They would try to calm me down. I called my partner, Jerome, and said, oh, they took my phone, and I'm on the phone, not knowing that I'm on my phone. And at that time I was 30, so they were like, oh, he's on drugs, he's drinking, and I wasn't doing any of those things. I really was just giving up on life. I even told him, I was like, you can leave me, I'm okay. I'll do this on my own. And then just being in the hospital by myself, I was just, at that point I was giving up. I was depressed, I wasn't eating. Yeah.
And is that because you just didn't have any answers of what was going on?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you have blood tests taken at the hospital?
Yes, I did.
Shane, if we can go to page 9, please. So we see here those bilirubins, ASTs, and ASLTs, and it looks here that your ASTs were 2,586 and your ALTs were 674, and then it also says high of bilirubin. I think on that same page, Shane, we've got the ammonia level and the INR. There we go. INR was 3.8, and scroll back on the bottom, I'm sorry. The ammonia level was also noted as high. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Did the doctors discuss with you what these enzyme levels meant or what that means?
Probably so. I just don't recall. I was in and out. I'm pretty sure they did.
So in and out, is that meaning like losing consciousness?
Yes, or I couldn't even stay focused on what they were telling me. And like I was saying, my memory wasn't sharp. Nothing was, I wasn't able to process anything.
And was that usual for you?
No, not at all.
Shane, if we can go to page 12, please. So I think at the bottom of the paragraph, it has your diagnosis. It says, plaintiff meets criteria for acute liver failure with hepatic encephalopathy with elevated ammonia, as well as of elevated INR causing coagulopathy. What went through your mind after you heard acute liver failure?
I was relieved that they actually found out what was going on in my body, but also scared at the same time because I really didn't know what that meant. I didn't know, does that mean I'm going to die? What is the result of having acute liver failure?
And on page 13, Shane, it states, if liver functions tests do not improve in the next 24 to 36 hours, patient may require transfer to higher center for transplant. Did the doctors tell you you might need a liver transplant?
Yes.
What was that like?
I was nervous because at that time I didn't know, like a kidney I know you can survive on dialysis, but a liver I didn't know if it was the same. So I wasn't able to process anything, but I'm still nervous at the same time because I'm not feeling any better.
So you just mentioned you weren't feeling better. What were the symptoms that you were still experiencing while you were in the hospital?
Loss of appetite, fatigue. The stomach pains have gone away, so I'm just fatigued. Loss of memory. The shakes have stopped.
And I know you mentioned that this was during COVID. Were you allowed visitors at that time?
No visitors at all.
So you had to process that information alone?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
It was hard. it was just hard to process everything. Normally I'll be able to like, oh, let me write this down or put it in my phone. I didn't even think to put anything in my phone or write it down. I was just looking at the doctor saying, oh yes, okay, thank you. And that's all.
And were you drinking real water while you were in the hospital?
No, I was not drinking real water.
So I know we talked about about 2 months before you even went into the hospital, but do you recall about how long you were in the hospital itself?
I believe 5 days.
And after you're released from the hospital, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling a little better, but still fatigued, loss of appetite, just low energy, didn't want to do anything. So I was still laying down, not eating, so drinking water once I got back home.
And after your hospitalization, did you follow up with blood tests?
Yes, I did.
And were your liver enzymes still elevated at that time?
Yes.
And do you feel that all of your symptoms have resolved from drinking real water?
I would like to say yes, but I do struggle day to day. My memory still hasn't come back. It's not as sharp. Just the job I do, so I read a lot of documents. My focus isn't there, typing. It's a delay for sure. Even having the self-motivation to get back to running, to doing the things I was doing before this occurred.
And that's still hard for you?
It is.
Dr. Hudson recommends future medical monitoring and liver scans. Are you committed to seeking those for yourself?
Yes, I am.
And with Dr. Sands, I know you mentioned your memory. He recommends neuropsychological and cognitive monitoring and testing. Is that something that you would look forward to doing?
Yes, I am.
And overall, how has this experience affected you?
Well, I have suppressed it for a while until like really speaking out. But it's been hard. There's days that I don't feel like myself. Even how I process things. Originally, before this happened, I was getting ready to go into law enforcement academy. They called me, told me, because it was during COVID, so they didn't have the academy. But going into 2021, the academy was going to start, and I wasn't well, so I told them I wasn't able to do it. Since then, I haven't gone back to try.
What is it like thinking about the future for you?
I want to get back to the old me, because I just stay in the house for the most part. I don't go anywhere. I don't like to be social. I don't like to be around a lot of people. I just want to get back to me, and I don't really feel like myself anymore.
After this has happened?
Yes.
Thanks, Nigel. That's
Thank
all
you.
the questions I have today.
Thank you.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, Mr. Davis. Richard,
Good morning.
good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Do you remember your deposition in October of 2024?
Yes, I do.
And your attorney was present there with you?
Yes, he was.
And you were sworn to tell the truth, just as you were here today?
Yes, that's great.
And you, everything was taken down into a transcript. Do you have opportunity to review that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. You didn't make any changes, correct?
No.
All right.
Excuse me.
Now, you first started drinking real water about 2 years before you got any symptoms and sick, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, during the time you were drinking real water, you never noticed anything not tasting right?
No, not at all.
And prior to your illness, you never had any complaints about the water?
No.
Now, your attorney just sent you kind of through your symptoms, and you had several visits to like quick cares, and those were just kind of, you'd go in, they'd check you out and release you hours later type of thing?
Yes.
Okay. And your symptoms you started having in 2020 were jitters, lip shivering, hand shaking, memory not being sharp, dizziness, and fatigue. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, you were eventually admitted to Centennial Hospital on November 28th, 2020?
Yes.
Okay. And I think you testified here that you were in the hospital for 5 days and then discharged?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any continued medical conditions that you attribute to real water today?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time, please?
Do you have any continuing medical conditions that you attribute to real water today?
No, but I do go to my primary and I get my liver checked with my labs. So that's the only thing.
Okay, and I believe that was in April of 2021?
My last doctor appointment?
Yes, with your primary care physician?
No. I see my doctor every 3 to 6 months.
Okay. At the time of your deposition in October of 2024, you were not aware of any ongoing liver issues, correct?
No.
No, that's not correct, or no, you did not have any ongoing liver issues?
No ongoing liver issues.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me. And you aren't on any medication to treat your liver, correct?
No. No medication.
And you haven't had any treatment or counseling with a psychologist or counselor, have you?
No, I do have a counselor, but no.
Not related to this?
No, not at all.
Okay. In the doctors that treat you, including your primary care physician, none of them have told you you need any future treatment related to your illness?
No.
In your in your deposition, I think you also testified that there are not any activities that you used to perform that you cannot perform today. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you haven't had any relapses or flare-ups since being discharged from the hospital, is that right?
No, I have not.
Okay. And in your follow-up treatments with your primary care physician, you haven't had any liver issues come up?
No.
Okay. That's been positive news for you, hasn't it?
Yes, but I'm still having symptoms, not symptoms, but I'm not myself before having that issue back in 2020.
All right, well, obviously, no one wants to go through an illness like you did, but would you say you're in a good place today?
I would say yes and no. Yes, I'm grateful to be alive, but know that my mental is not the same anymore, how I process things or how I look at life. But I am thankful to still be here.
Okay. There was a mention of if your symptoms didn't get better and if your liver tests didn't go down, you may have to be transferred to a liver transplant center. correct?
Yes, that is
Okay, and
correct.
this was back in November of 2020.
Yes,
But you never went to a liver transplant center, correct?
that is correct.
You never needed a transplant?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Redirect now.
No, no more.
All right, thank you. I don't think so. All right, sir, you may step down.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we would call Blaine Jones by video.
Okay.
Court's indulgence.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure why it's doing that. Can you?
We can, if you need to take a break, we can do that.
Judge, we can call another live witness while Shane does that.
And that's fine.
What do you need, Shane? 5 minutes?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we'll give you a break, sir. Because technical issues do occur. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're admonished to converse not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject matter connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report or a commentary on the trial by any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio, social media, or last but not least, form or express any opinion on any subject connected with the trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. And we're just going to take this a quick technical break.
All right.
As soon as he's done, we're ready to go.
Yes, Your Honor. Jury's clear.
Thank you, sir. It's off the record. It's off the record.
And counsel, is this going to be William Jones?
Order. Please, Stephen. Thank you. Your Honor, I'll line up the jury.
Yes. And Shane, we're okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the time.
You're welcome, sir.
What's that? Yes. Well, I had to restart.
All rise to the jury. Please be seated. Thank you.
All right, do the parties stipulate to the presence of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and it's my understanding the technical issues have been resolved, is that
Yes, Your
correct?
Honor, I fixed it.
You fixed it?
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. Shane,
Your Honor, we
you
would call Blaine Jones by video.
have- all right, thank you, sir.
Yes.
So, Mr. Jones, did you drink real water?
I did.
Okay, could you take a look at Exhibit 26, please, and tell me if you recognize that document?
I don't recognize the document specifically, but I recognize what it's, thank you, describing.
Okay. This appears to be a narrative that was put on a GoFundMe page, okay? Did you put a narrative on a GoFundMe page?
I did.
Okay. And does this appear to be the narrative that you put on the GoFundMe page?
Appears to be. I can't recall specifically what I said, and if this is 100% accurate, but...
Okay. Approximately when did you put the narrative on the GoFundMe page?
Looks like it was 25th of October, 2020. Has that date on the document there? Sounds about right.
Where are you looking? Back page?
It says 501.
Okay. You're looking at Spanish on the bottom,
Yes,
where it says Fecha de Creation.
correct.
You speak Spanish, right?
Not fluent, but yes.
You know Fecha means date. Right.
Yeah.
So you're assuming the date of creation of this is October 25th?
Yes.
Is that consistent with your memory that you did create this on October 25th?
Sounds about right.
Okay, back to the first page. Could you read the first full paragraph that starts with my name is Blaine Jones?
My name is Blaine Jones. The pain, confusion, and fear I have learned about acute liver failure and hepatitis over the last few weeks invokes the old phrase, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Okay, and this says the last few weeks, and we've had the date of October 25th on the page. Does this refresh your recollection as to when you had this liver injury?
It was October of that year, yeah?
October 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now there's some reference made in here to a hunting trip,
Correct.
and where were you going hunting?
Utah.
Can you be more specific?
Just outside of Carbon.
What were you hunting for?
Elk.
You have tags?
I did.
And you were accompanied by someone?
I went up there alone, but I knew someone that lived in the area and I met up with him.
One of your friends, I assume.
An acquaintance, I had met him.
What was his name?
I don't specifically recall his name, to be honest with you right now. I had only met him one time prior to that, and I haven't spoken to him since.
Okay, but he had a tag too?
He did not know. He knew the area, and he offered to show me around.
He was more of a guide person?
No, he wasn't a guy. Acquaintance.
Okay. So does this... Anyway, you drove to Utah from Nevada?
Yes.
Do you remember if you left on Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
I think I left on like a Thursday, something like that, maybe a Wednesday.
Okay, if you want to take a look at the second page, and I think it'll make people in context to it. 1, 2, 3, 4 down. Could you read that paragraph?
Which paragraph again, sir?
Where it says after the morning hike, and then we'll try to put this into some kind of context.
After the morning hike, I thought I had full-blown food poisoning.
Now, was this the first full day in Utah?
So that day, I had arrived the day prior.
Okay.
And set up camp and, different things.
Was that the day you went to KFC?
No, it was the, yes, I believe so.
So on the day you arrived, you went to KFC, right?
I believe so, yes.
And you said, quote, later that afternoon I began to feel sick, unquote.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so you actually started feeling sick the day that you got there?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you bring red water with you?
I did.
And how much, if you know?
I believe I brought a 5-gallon bottle.
So you were drinking it during the course of being out there?
Correct.
Okay. Did you bring anything else other than real water?
I might have had some other Gatorade or some other type of drink, probably.
Okay. Okay, so basically you started getting sick that afternoon, right?
Correct.
And you say, quote, nausea came over me that night, unquote. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And in the morning, you had what you thought was, quote, food poisoning, unquote, right?
That's what it initially felt like, yes.
Okay. And having had food poisoning, you're throwing up a lot, and you're feeling nauseous and weak, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so then it says that afternoon I went to sleep, and this was Saturday, right?
That's what it says there, yeah, sounds about right.
So this was the Saturday after the Friday that you got there?
Correct. Believe so.
It says Sunday you slept all day, only to wake up at midnight feeling decimated after having thrown up and dehydrated.
Yeah, that's what it says.
You need to take that?
No, it's fine.
Okay, and is that in fact what happened?
Yeah, as best as I can remember.
Okay. Have you ever felt this way before?
I can recall having, food poisoning where I felt similar to that. However, Sunday, it kind of progressively got worse. So it felt at that point in time like a very bad case of food poisoning. Very severe case, I guess you could say, of food poisoning.
Okay, so it says you slept all day. Was that on site at the hunting area?
Yeah, I was in a tent.
You set a tent?
Correct.
And was that just for you, or was the other guy sleeping up there too?
No, I had my tent by myself, and he had his own tent.
Okay. So it says, quote, I decided I needed to go to the hospital for attention. Right?
Yep.
And did you go to the hospital for attention?
I did.
And what hospital would that be?
The local hospital there in around Carbon. I don't remember the name specifically off the top of my head.
Carbon spelled C-A-R-B-O-N?
Yes.
Okay, that whatever the local hospital was in Carbon you went to?
Correct.
Okay, so you went into the ER, they gave you some tests, and then fluids, and then they let you out, right?
Yep.
How long do you think you were in the ER at that point in time?
Maybe an hour or two.
Okay. So you drive back to camp and you say, Monday you slept all day. Is that right?
That's what it says, yeah. Sounds right.
So you actually slept all day Sunday and all day Monday?
Besides the trip to the hospital, yeah.
Okay.
For the most part, I think.
It says you had no energy, I had no energy to get up, barely enough to choke down some water. Did I read that right?
That's what it says, yeah.
And so the water would be the real water?
Most likely, yes.
Okay. So during the time period you were sick, you were still drinking the real water?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Moving on. I dumped myself into my truck and he drove down the mountain to the pharmacy. Would that be your friend?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what day would this have been?
I don't recall specifically if it was Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, if you take a look back up the paragraph, after it says Monday you slept all day, it says, quote, the next morning I felt the necessity to get up.
Okay, yeah, so then I guess it would have been Tuesday.
Okay, so on Tuesday he drove down the mountain to the pharmacy, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you filled the prescription, you went to your friend's house, right?
Correct.
And you say, quote, what I would soon realize was I had a few levels to fall down before I hit the bottom of this nightmare.
Yep.
Right? And the nightmare would be the illness you're suffering, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the next paragraph says you got off the couch. Is that the couch at his house?
I believe so.
And here we think this is Tuesday, right?
Sounds about right.
Okay. So you described going to the bathroom and you think you went multiple times and he says you went once, right?
Yes.
So you were delusional at this time?
Yes.
So you went outside, and it sounds like you're kind of stumbling down the street. Is that what's going on?
I was out in front of his house.
Okay. So your mother called an ambulance?
Yes, I was trying to reach somebody that I knew, and she was the only one that answered the phone at the time.
Okay, so this would have been Tuesday night?
Afternoon.
Tuesday afternoon, okay.
Maybe midday, I'm not sure.
And this house is in Carver, right?
Yep.
All right. So the ambulance arrived and they put you in the back of the ambulance and they take you to the hospital, I guess, right?
Yep.
And skipping over a paragraph, it says, quote, next time I remember being wheeled down the hall into a room with a doctor. Over the next few hours I was getting IV fluids. Next, the doctor told me my liver was shutting down and the next few days would be very painful. Did I read that right?
Looks like it.
So this would have been on Tuesday?
Yes.
So Tuesday, a doctor told you that your liver was shutting down, correct?
I believe that was what the doctor said, yes, if I remember correctly. Again, I was pretty out of it, but as far as I can remember, yes.
Okay. And do you know what ALT and AST liver tests are?
I'm familiar, somewhat, very elementary understanding of it.
Do you know if they ran those on you at this time?
I don't recall or not, no.
Was there some other member of the family communicating with the hospital about your condition, other than, well, was there, other than you?
I believe they got a hold of somebody. I don't know specifically who they were speaking to.
Okay, the next paragraph or sentence, it says they notified your father, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that would be Brand Jones, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so he actually talked to you and said, I'm going to come get you?
I don't remember if I talked to him or if the doctor relayed the message. I just remember somehow knowing that he was coming to pick me up.
Okay. Well, it says, quote, he gave me two options. One, stay in the hospital, or two, go to the hotel, right?
Yeah, I was referring to the doctor.
Oh, the doctor gave you two options. Okay. So you went to the hotel?
Yes.
And the reason you went to the hotel is because you were worried about the medical bills since you had no insurance?
Yep.
Would you have otherwise stayed in the hospital?
The way the doctor put it and giving me that option, he was basically saying it was, up to me what to do. At that point in time, like I said, I didn't have health insurance, so I made the decision to go to the hotel.
Okay, and you walked from the hospital to the hotel?
Yeah, it was just down the street, maybe 100 yards or so, 200 yards.
Okay, and you say, quote, I left the hospital on the hardest, less than a block walk I've ever experienced, unquote. Did I read that right?
Yep.
Okay, and you were stumbling and fell on the ground over 15 times?
Sounds about right.
So 15 times in 100 yards?
Yep.
Okay, and you weren't in good shape, I take it?
I was not.
Okay. So flip over to the next page. Had you already checked into that hotel, or did you have to check in the hotel?
I honestly don't remember or recall how I got the key or the reservation for the room.
You were out of it?
Very much so.
Okay. But you say here you flopped in the hotel bed, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then your wife convinces the hotel people to feed you and give you some Advil, right?
Yeah, they left some food and Advil, out in my room.
Okay. And then your dad comes up. Yes?
Yes.
And in the next paragraph, it says, quote, the doctor warned me you were going to feel horrible for a few days, unquote. Was that before you left the hospital?
When he gave me that warning?
Yeah.
It was when I was at the hospital, yes.
So you went back to the hospital after your father came?
No.
Okay.
Not at that point, no.
So while you were at the hospital, he told you this?
Yes.
Okay. And now it says this was Wednesday now, right? We're on Wednesday?
Yes, that's what it says. Looks like
Okay.
it.
And so your dad drives you back to Vegas, I assume, right?
Yep.
Okay, so they set you up kind of a little room here at your house, I take it, right?
Yep.
And then you got a case of hiccups?
Yeah, I remember it started on the drive home, and
It says you're forcing fluids down. Is that during the drive?
where
During the next 2.5 days, my time was filled with hiccups, forcing fluids down, and every time I trip to the bathroom, the fluids come back up.
yeah, so that was when I was at the house and the room that got set up in the bedroom.
In the fluids, you were still drinking the real water?
Probably that's would have been the water we had at the house. I don't remember. I can't. It's hard to convey the difficulty of being aware of what's going on.
Okay.
At that point in time.
But you started getting worse at home. That's what it says.
Yeah, over the next couple of days, I mean, as the doctor told me at the hospital that the next few days were going to be very hard, and I definitely did continue to get worse.
Okay, you got worse than you were when you were in the hospital, when you were stumbling 15 times, walking 100 yards to the hotel?
Yeah.
You were worse than that even?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I was throwing up blood and not able to hold anything down, and
throwing up blood, that's the reference to the red-brown mix of fluid exiting my mouth?
Yep.
It says your grandmother, had come 5 hours away to aid in my care.
Yeah, she came to help.
Where did she live
She lives in California.
at? Just after midnight on Friday, her voice uttered what I needed, hospital.
Yep.
So she told you to go back to the hospital?
Yes.
And so Friday, we're a week after, this is the Friday after we went to Utah on the Friday.
Correct.
So this was the 8th day in a row you've been sick?
Friday to Friday would be 7 days.
Okay.
8 days.
All right.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, and then to the car, you go your 3rd trip to the hospital.
Yep.
So that's 2 trips to the Utah hospital, 3rd trip to a hospital here in Vegas, I assume, right?
Correct.
Okay, and what hospital is that?
I don't recall the name of it off the top of my head. It's the one here up in, it's north of the 215 over off of Buffalo, somewhere in that area over there.
North of 215 by Buffalo. Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember. Spring Mountain maybe is the name of it. I can't remember what specifically.
Have you been to the hospital before?
To that hospital?
Yeah.
No, I haven't been to that hospital.
So anyway, they checked you into the hospital, right?
Yep.
And you say, I was diagnosed as critical and rushed into the ICU. That would be the intensive care unit?
Yep.
So they checked you into intensive care.
Yep.
And we're in the middle of COVID right now, aren't we? October 10th?
Maybe it was ramping down. But, I mean, it depends on what your definition of the middle of COVID is, I guess.
They had COVID restrictions at the hospital, so.
Yeah, I mean, they still have COVID restrictions at the hospital right now.
Okay. So this weekend, I stayed under constant supervision, blood tests every 4 hours, and something continuously be injected into one of my 2 IV connections. Did I read that right?
Looks like it, yes.
So that weekend would be the Saturday and the Sunday after you checked into the Vegas hospital, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Next sentence says, quote, the doctors don't know why I got sick, unquote.
Yep.
Did The doctors tell you they didn't know why you got sick?
They did.
And I assume they asked you if you did alcohol, right?
Yeah, they had a number of different questions.
Okay, did you use alcohol?
Occasionally.
Okay, okay. So they ruled out alcohol, right? Or you ruled out alcohol?
I mean, I from my understanding of, you know, cirrhosis and liver failure, I had not drinking enough in my life to get to that point.
Okay.
I'm not a medical expert, obviously, but
You're an occasional drinker?
yeah,
Like 1 or 2 drinks a week, maybe?
at the most.
Okay, and it says, what they did know was if I had gotten worse, the only option was a liver transplant, unquote. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And did they discuss a liver transplant with you?
Yeah, a specialist came in and he said that there was a short amount of time where he was debating whether or not to send me to California for a liver transplant.
Did he tell you what hospital in California they were concerned?
No, I don't recall
Okay,
specifically.
remember if it was perhaps Loma Linda, USC, UCLA?
I don't remember.
Okay, what was the specialist's name, if you remember?
I don't.
And you said he came in, he was not at the hospital, he came from another hospital?
The way he made it sound is he kind of circulated around hospitals because his specialty was something in regards to liver or something, you know.
Okay. And it says, quote, my tests for liver failure were teetering at this point of no return, unquote. Did I read that right?
Yeah.
And those would be ALT, AST tests?
They weren't reviewing tests with me at that point in time specifically. I just recall a conversation with that doctor. He basically, and this was shortly after I began to, you know, not get worse.
Now it says, my tests for liver failure were teetering at this point of no return. Do you remember they were talking about your ALT or AST being in the thousands? Does that ring any bells?
I don't recall specifically what tests. I mean, other than generically referring to tests at that point in time. I mean, I'm still in the ICU and very, don't have all my faculties, I guess would be the way to put it.
Okay, and the next paragraph says, by Monday, I was relocated to general level hospital, stable enough to be transferred, unquote. Did I read that right?
Yep.
So that means on Monday, you're moved from ICU to general section hospital?
Correct.
So you've been in the hospital, you checked in Friday night, right?
Yeah.
So you've been there Saturday, Sunday, and on Monday, they moved you out of ICU.
I believe that sounds all right.
Okay, and would I be correct that they did not let you bring real water into the hospital?
I don't recall bringing anything other than myself to the hospital.
Okay, so the only liquid you drank at the hospital was hospital water.
I wasn't able to drink any liquid at the hospital for a good amount of time.
You didn't drink any liquids?
When I was in the ICU, I wasn't able to really drink or eat much of anything. And then I think just before they transferred me out, I had some like liquid food. I was able to keep that down, and then when I was in the general sort of recovery area, was when I was actually able to, you know, drink some water and get some food from the cafeteria, or they would deliver food to your room.
Okay, and when you drank the water, that was hospital water, not real water.
It was the water they provided, yes.
Okay. All right, and it says, I skipped something, it says that you were having blood tests every 4 hours during the weekend. See that in the top there?
Yeah, there was a nurse that would come in when I was in the ICU every 4 hours to take a sample and run tests.
And you know if those were the liver tests that we're talking about?
I don't know what they were testing for.
Okay, the next paragraph says, Tuesday morning, you want to be discharged. So you went home Tuesday morning?
Late morning, midday, somewhere around there, yeah.
Okay. It took me a week and a half of hell to achieve my regime of rest at home, unquote. Did I read that right?
Regimen.
Regimen, okay. So Tuesday morning, you went home, right?
Yep.
And how long did you stay at home before you were able to go back to work?
I want to say it was about a week and a half.
Okay. So since we've got about a week and a half to Tuesday morning, you were pretty much put out of commission for 3 weeks. That's about right?
Yeah, and I mean, I was still extremely weak and out of it even at that point in time, after that point in time.
Okay, it says, in this sentence it says, the debilitation of liver failure, I have been to hell and back. Did I read that right?
Yeah, it was a very terrible experience.
Okay. You want to go through this again if I gave you $10 million, would you?
Yeah.
Your Honor, that concludes the video.
All right.
Your Honor, we have another video. This would be Anthony Randolph.
Okay, sir.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated. State and spell your first and last name for the record.
Anthony Randolph, ANTHONY-RANDOLPH.
Mr. Anthony, it's my understanding that you worked for Real Water.
I did.
It's my understanding that you worked for Real Water from approximately 2009 until, I believe, you were terminated in 2021.
Sounds like somewhere around there.
So you started out as a sales representative for Real Water, correct?
I did.
Okay. And it's my understanding that you remained a sales representative for several years and then ultimately became a vice president of distribution. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Now, Mr. Randolph, do you recall a time when you began hearing problems with Real Water affecting people's health?
I got a phone call from, I was already, I wasn't with the company, but I got a phone call, I think from either Costco or one of the accounts. They called, trying to reach us to discuss whatever is going on.
Okay, do you remember the time that happened, the year, the month?
I stopped working on my birthday, so I know it was after February 5th.
Yes, sir.
And I think it's the year 2021.
That's exactly right.
So it was some in that time frame, March, April, I'm not sure, but between when it hit public information and after February 5th is when I received a phone call from one of the accounts, the large accounts, notifying us that they had have the product taken off their shelves and things of that nature.
Yes, sir. Well, let's take a step back, a few months back, actually. So, just to give the jury some context, February 5th, 2021, that's your birthday. That's when you were talking about the calls you received. And termination.
Right, that's when I was so-called terminated.
But if we take it a few months before then, okay, do you recall a time in the fall of 2020 when you became aware of a number of customer complaints?
Oh, yes.
Tell me what you recall about that time period in customer complaints.
The office had moved from West Desert Inn out to Henderson. So I would go out there. The bottled water, the ready-to-drink water, was actually being produced in Arizona at the time. And they had an office with a 5-gallon jugs that stayed here in Vegas. And I would go to Arizona, so I stayed here in Vegas. So I would frequent that office out in Henderson. And going down there and talking to a couple of people that were running the 5-gallon plant, they started telling me about, people calling, getting sick. And then I actually, had some family members that got sick. And then I just started kind of asking questions and putting things together myself.
Well, let's stop there for a second so the jury is on the same page. I believe this was in October. I'm using this based on your deposition, Mr. Randolph. If I make a mistake, please tell me, and if we need to, we know to put the deposition back on the screen. Do you recall this being October of 2020?
When people were getting sick, I'm going to say it's October because if I'm not mistaken, my nephew was hospitalized in like the first week of November or something like that. The people that I personally knew got hospitalized in like the beginning of November.
So you recall your own nephew getting sick in sometime in October, November 2020?
Yes.
And he was drinking real water?
Yes.
Do you remember anyone else in your family, your family circle?
Yes.
Can you tell me who those were? You don't need the name.
Oh,
we're just talking about my
it was my brother-in-law's best friend. He was hospitalized.
So you had two hospitalizations, one being your nephew and the other being your brother-in-law's best friend.
Yes.
And they both were drinking real water.
Yes.
And did they have similar symptoms?
Yes.
Okay, so this be vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, confusion, all those types of things?
Yeah, it was almost to the point where they were talking, was it a liver transplant? They were hospitalized for 4 or 5 days each brother.
And so all of this is coming to your attention, not only from your friend of a family member, but also your family in the October 2020 period.
Beginning of November for sure. Look, it was, I think they probably got sick, but I know they're hospitalized beginning of November.
Yes, sir. And while this is happening, are you also becoming aware of customer complaints from the public?
I became aware of customer complaints by way of the two or three gentlemen that still worked at the 5-gallon plant out in Henderson. They would tell me. I didn't speak to anyone else besides the owner's son who got sick, and then I found out some other people that we knew got sick, and I called on them as well to find out what was going on.
So at this point, you're hearing, you know personally 2 people, but you're also hearing of multiple other people
Yes.
getting sick.
Yes.
So then, do you at some time form an opinion that the only similarity between these people would be real water?
Yeah, when I had a conversation with the owner's son, because I knew he was, became very ill, and it probably was in October, and I thought it was COVID, and they just didn't want anybody to know. But when my nephew and then another friend got sick, and then the phone calls that these guys were receiving in the office, then I asked the owner's son, his name was Blaine, I just said, I need to talk to you on a personal level. I know you were sick, can you tell me what happened? And he started describing everything that was going on, and it was identical to what my nephew and my brother-in-law best friend was experiencing. And so at that point, I told Blaine, I said, it's the water. I said, because the only thing you guys have in common is you drink the water. Because even though my brother-in-law's best friend, comes around the family all the time, but he and my nephew don't really, they don't jive like that. They're a different age group, everything else. So at that point, I told Blaine, I said, you got to do a recall, man. There's something in the water. And that was probably beginning of November, something like that, middle of November, whatever it was.
And so you were forthright enough to come to Blaine, man to man, and I guess employee or sort of employee to vice president, he was his owner's son, and have this conversation in confidence.
I did.
And at this point, you're laying it on the line.
Yeah, I did.
And you have the epiphany. You have the realization that real water is the constant between all of these beaches.
I did.
And you tell him it is the water that's causing these sicknesses.
I did.
Did you tell him that your nephew was hospitalized?
I did.
Did you tell him that your brother-in-law's best friend was hospitalized?
I did.
Did he confide in you that he'd been hospitalized?
He did.
And despite all of that, along with the customer complaints you became aware of, let me stop right there. Did you inform him that you heard through your conversations with the employees at the Henderson location that customers were calling sick?
I did.
So you laid that all on the table for him?
I did.
And you gave him the opportunity to be reasonable by presenting him with the recall suggestion?
That was just my suggestion, yes.
And what did he say?
He said no, because I first thought it was the water, but then I trying to remember everything that he said, trying to justify that it wasn't the water, and I just told him, I said, Blank, listen, we're getting numerous phone calls, according to, I think the gentleman's name was Anthony as well. They're fielding so many phone calls, people complaining. I know people that got sick, you were sick, you guys don't know each other, so it has to be the water.
Yes.
And he just, I traced it back, it's not that many, he just kept trying to justify it, so I just left it alone. I thought I did my part and brought it up and went from there.
Now, this conversation happened sometime October, November 2020. Do you have a subsequent conversation with them again? Because you've told us already a little bit that you're getting calls from some of your retailers. Did you ever have a second conversation with Mr. Jones, Blaine Jones, trying to again recommend doing a recall?
I can't say 100% yes or no. I don't recall. I remember that initial conversation because he, confided in me and told me what he was experiencing.
Yes.
I'm sure, just because that became the talk, when you go to the office, that just became the talk of, what was going on. So I'm going to say possibly, but I can't tell you for sure that I had a direct conversation like I did at the beginning with him.
Let me see if I can refresh your recollection again by use of your deposition.
And then, was that conversation, Mr. Randolph, before you spoke with Mr. Jones and encouraged him to do a recall?
I don't recall the timing of it all, but it was in the same area, the same time frame, because again, and I had numerous conversations with Blaine about doing a recall, and he wanted me to go into business with them or represent him selling the concentrate at the beginning of the year, and we had conversations about I didn't know how many people got sick. I knew to the degree of some. I know some personally, but I didn't, I had numerous conversations with Blaine, who kind of ran the 5-gallon plant.
So does that refresh your recollection?
It actually does.
So you, not only after having the first conversation requesting a recall, you had follow-up conversations with him. You're using your words, numerous conversations, all the way into the beginning of the year. He still didn't do a recall.
Yeah, because we did talk about reminded me, he did want me to go out and sell the concentrate itself. So we had conversations about, obviously, the problems that were going on, as well as how could we do something going forward.
So let's think about this. You're having your nephew get sick, the best friend of your brother-in-law, people that you're hearing about through the operations at Henderson, and despite all of that, including him getting sick, Mr. Jones getting sick, he's still trying to push the concentrate.
Yes.
So, Mr. Randolph, later on, you start receiving calls in the beginning of the year from some of the such retailers, correct?
Yeah, I remember one or two maybe.
Okay. You remember, I believe you testified that Costco may have called and others may have called. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And they're calling you because they're getting notifications of complaints from customers, correct?
I think the first phone call I got was more of, hey, we received some notification that we have to, take this. It was somebody that I didn't normally speak with. It was more like in their compliance department, or I don't know what department they called me from. Yes. And at the time I didn't work for the company, so I just referred them over to, I gave them the Brent's cell phone number.
And just to give you some more context, during your deposition, you indicated that you spoke to him in October, you spoke to him in November, and then I just gave you the portions talking about going into the beginning of the year. Do you recall sometime between November and the time they terminated you, February 5th, receiving those calls from your retailers? Just to put it in on our board.
I don't think I received a call from a retailer like Costco because I was no longer representing the company at that point. So I just, of course, answered the call and listened to what they had to say. And I didn't represent the company anymore and didn't care, but I just gave them the owner's cell phone number.
Well, I'm going to do you a service, Mr. Randolph. You actually did seem to care, despite what they did to you. I'm going to see if I can refresh your recollection on those calls in November and then beginning of the year. I'd like to show you your deposition testimony, pages 152, line 3 through 154.
Fall of 2020, after Real Water moves out of Desert Inn, are you aware came in regarding people having symptoms from drinking water in the Vegas area?
It was brought to my attention in, I think, the end of October, beginning of November, that people, well, I knew some people that got sick, and I knew the owner's son was hospitalized at one point, and this is probably at the end of October, November. I thought maybe he had COVID, but then after speaking to some of the people that worked at the new location out in Henderson, and they told me they were getting a lot of complaints, I just started doing my own little looking into it, and I realized that it had to be water because the people that I knew that got sick, they didn't know each other, and they had the same symptoms. And the one thing I did know that they did the same was drink real water. So I went to Blaine Jones, which was the owner's son, and I asked him to tell me what happened to him. I said, I know you were in the hospital. Please, you know, I'm not trying to get into your personal business, but what took place? What happened? And when he explained to me what happened, I told him right then and there, I said, Blaine, you must do a recall. The water is something in the water. I said, I know a couple of people now that have gotten back to me that have been sick with the exact same symptoms, and the only thing you guys have in common is you drink the 5-gallon home jugs. You must do a recall. He refused. That was in November, and it wasn't until I think, again, I got a phone call from their new sales manager or VP of sales, whoever he was. It was actually on my birthday, so it was February 5th of, if you're saying they closed in 2021, so that was February 5th of 21, that I received a phone call saying that, you know, hey, we're going to terminate, you know, your independent status. It was a 2-minute phone call. We left it at that. I was going to pursue whatever I had to pursue going forward. And then I remember getting a phone call from, I believe, Costco or Sprouts or Whole Foods, because although I let everybody know I was no longer with the company, I guess I still was down because I've talked to these people for so many years. And all of a sudden I got a call, I think it was Costco first, from their quality department. And that's how I found out what was going on. And then I let the young lady know, I don't remember who called me, but I let the young lady know that I no longer represent the company, and I gave her Brent Jones' cell phone number. And then when I got off the phone with that person, I got another call, and then another call, and then they just started coming in.
Does that refresh your recollection now, Mr. Randolph?
Yeah, I've been saying that.
And sir, despite your best efforts, Real Water didn't do a recall in October, November, December, January, February.
I don't think they agree.
Sure. And a recall was done, you would agree with me that the 5-gallon deliveries would have stopped being delivered.
I would think so, and then a recall, yes.
Shelves, bottles would be taken off the shelves.
It wasn't, I couldn't say, it was the 5 gallons was not on the shelf. The 5 gallons was not sold at retail.
I'm talking about the Real Water shelves.
I mean, I don't know, because those are separate, so it could have depended on how their crisis team would have dealt with it. The ready-to-drink product is, they sold it totally separate from 5-gallon jugs.
So, in terms of your prices, what you're talking about, something would have happened.
I would guess that something would have happened.
Notification would have gone to the public.
I was suggesting that, yes.
Perhaps people would not have drank water that's getting other people sick, correct?
Definitely 5-gallon jug.
Did you have any involvement with customer complaints?
Sometimes.
Okay, direct your attention to Exhibit 16, please. This is a customer complaint dated 5/21/14, where some customer says she found a, quote,
gasoline-like substance, unquote, in a liter bottle. Do you see that reference there?
Yes, I'm reading it now. I can't say I remember this specific complaint, no.
Your Honor, that concludes the deposition. I think it'd probably be a good time to take the mid-morning break.
All right. That's 10:40. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject matter connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report of a commentary on the trial by any persons connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including without limitations, newspaper, television, radio. Remember the social media prohibition, and last but not least, do not form or express any opinion on any subject matter connected with this trial until the cause is finally submitted to you. Now, let's take 10 minutes.
All rise for the portion of jury.
Thank you, sir. All right. Do we have more video or live testimony next?
We have 2 plaintiffs, Your Honor.
Okay, all right.
And we do have more video.
I understand. Well, the video fits in well from a trial management perspective.
Your Honor, we're down to 4 witnesses today. 4 more witnesses. So I think we might actually have time to play a defense video today if possible. We'll work on that.